So I'm going to talk about my favorite things. What my favorite things is me. No, it's not that I'm really like right on top of with very important people like Matt Lauer who can walk around without his underpants. And Charlie Rose. And oddly enough, Charlie Rose and Matt Lauer never worked in the same room, so they couldn't really measure their non-pants look. In any case, so I want to talk about pundits, which is a really important thing and something that everybody is concerned is and terribly concerned with, because you can't imagine how life would be without people telling you how things are and believing that they're actually more qualified than you to say that. And so the first thing I remember about it is an episode of Seinfeld where George wants to go and become a color analyst, and Jerry says, well, they give those jobs to former ball players. And I think about it, it's of course the case. They give those jobs to former ball players who are actually, semi-competent in front of the camera, who can actually put a sentence together, a few words together without stumbling, unlike me, who stumbles all the time. And so, they give those jobs to former people who have, experience in the game, people who have, achieved something, who have names. The problem is, these people, for the most part, aren't really as well-rounded as you think they are. Now, some people are fairly intelligent, some have gone to college, some have graduated from a good college and have earned some sort of a reputation in some sort of academia or something. But most people just play. And while they're certainly, especially those who have achieved something in their careers, are very capable of talking about, shooting with the right foot and curling the ball in the right space, most of that is pretty evident, especially if you, look at soccer. So you don't need, some English announcer who may have scored, 200 goals in his career to tell you that he hit it with his right hand perfectly around the wall. We saw it, and it doesn't make a genius to describe exactly what happened. So that's kind of idiotic. And this is what most people talk about. That's, in-game color analysts talk about, most of them talk about what you're just seeing. And they don't explain what happened. They just regurgitate, give you additional play-by-play. The second, and so, George was correct. He was just as deserving to be a colorman. The second thing that I remember goes back about a decade ago when Rafael Benitez was still coaching Liverpool. And it was during some sort of a Champions League match where Liverpool was either tied or losing at halftime. And, ESPN went to, at the time, Champions League was in ESPN. So they went to a halftime show, and then one of their experts, who happened to have been a very good player in the English Premier League, and before even, opined that, well, Benitez ought to take this player out, put this player in, go more attacking, etc., etc. So what happens after the game, after the team returns from locker rooms, Benitez pulls out his central midfielder, who was Yossi Benayoun at the time, and moves him about 20 yards forward. So he was playing a deep lying, almost a holding midfielder. He moved him into kind of an 8 spot, not quite as far as number 10, but he went to number 8, and it changed the spacing on Liverpool, and they went on to score. I think they scored 3 goals in the second half. They won 3-1. So in other words, Rafa Benitez saw and knew what he wanted to do, and he did what he wanted to do. A studio analyst who was, as most studio analysts go, was fairly competent, thought he knew what Liverpool needed, and he was completely wrong. Does it happen often? Well, I think it happens all the time. Now, it's pretty easy to say for one guy, well, they should be attacking more, they should be, defending more, or they should, batten down the hatches, or they should, cross more. But essentially, when it comes to actual X's and O analysis, most in-studio analysts and most game analysts aren't equipped to do it. Now, some, of course, have coached in the league, some have coached at fairly high level, so they know what they're doing. The aforementioned Rafa Benitez used to write a column for Sky Sports where he would break down not just the matches, but talk about sort of philosophy of different teams, philosophy of different coaches, and being an ex-coach, at the time he was an ex-coach, but being somebody with great expertise in the subject, his opinion really mattered. And to me, they mattered even more because I really agreed with what he was saying, what he was writing. But that's Rafa Benitez. It's somebody who achieved, who won the Champions League, who, coached some big-time teams, who may not have achieved anything major in the last 12, 13 years, but who nonetheless remains a top expert in the field. What you see on ESPN, what you see on Fox, what you see on Sky Sports, and heck, I don't know the non-speaking part, but I know non-speaking parts. I don't know what they say in Germany. I don't know what they say in Italy because I don't speak those languages very well. But I speak other languages a little bit, and it's the same thing. They bring in somebody who is a name, usually a former player, usually somebody who was famous for his great speed and stamina and great shot, and now he has to opine on tactics and strategy, and he's incapable of doing so. This is what happens constantly. It happens pretty much every sport, maybe with the exception of the basketball. I remember watching, Hubie Brown, and now there is Jeff Van Gundy and those guys, and they've coached good teams and have been good coaches, and they know the particulars, they understand all that stuff. But most people do not. Most coaches do not. Most experts, most so-called experts do not. Now, it's a little bit different in the NBA because of the popularity of the sport. People who go on TV and try to explain you stuff are really paid well. So they don't need to coach to, earn a living. They could actually stay in the studio, and and the pay is good enough for them to consider switching professions. For the most part, people who work the studios are either ex-players who, once again, aren't well-read, well-educated. They have personality. They have to be able to pronounce funky words like "he slam dunked him." I don't know. But anyway, that's the way it goes. So when I watch soccer, when I watch the ESPN, for example, in halftime, when I watch the post-game shows, I watch the, Robbie Earl and Robbie Musto and Robbie Martino. Okay, it's Robbie Kyle Martino. Goes with triple name among the Robbies. What I'm finding is that they're correct on 70% of what they're saying, I think, but they're not being original in what they're saying. So if a team is losing, they need to go forward more. If the team is winning, they need to, play, cover their best player from the opposing side, etc., etc. It's none of it extremely original, extremely innovative, extremely incisive. It's just stuff. And the reason I brought up the punditry is because now, with Kyle Martino, Robbie Kyle Martino, running for U.S. presidency, and Eric Ronaldo's running for U.S. presidency, they're just, and I don't mean to take their playing experience out of the question, because it is important, but now they're pretending to be experts on the whole field of soccer, on the economics of soccer, on association, on everything. And as somebody said long ago, it was a famous economist, people pretend to be experts on things they don't know. It's like the first level. So once you learn what you know, you really want to opine on things you don't know. So here I am. In any case, so now you have Kyle Martino, you have Eric Ronaldo wanting to be president of USSF. That's United States Soccer Federation. And what happens at this level is that they don't know. They've never been administrators. They've been players. They've been pundits. Now Eric Ronaldo did coach a minor league team, to no great respect. And this is the United States, so I didn't expect it to be particularly, great X's and O type of endeavor. And so these guys go, and they want to run U.S. soccer. Now maybe they succeed, but when I hear their statements on what is wrong with U.S. soccer, I completely disagree with that. I don't think pay-for-play is the problem. I think when women stayed in a flea bag motel, and it weren't flea bags, they were actual bed bugs, which is far more of a problem that most people are aware of. So this concentrates on tertiary issues, in other words, on something that it doesn't have the direct effect on the performance of the U.S. national team. And so they are looking to fix every little problem that doesn't affect anything. It's like, oh, you're sick. Well, maybe you're wearing the wrong kind of shoes. That's my analysis. In other words, but what happens, these problems, they're not fake problems. I mean, people are legitimately concerned about the going-ons in U.S. soccer. They are legitimately disingenuously, seriously trying to make it better. But they're not trying to fix the main issue that's affecting the problem or that's causing the problem. The real cause of players of the United States not qualifying for the World Cup has been evident for at least half a decade, maybe even longer. And the real cause has never been discussed because it's not a popular cause, because pundits like to take, their fake analysis, their reasons, and blow it up and make it like the sole, everything. Well, Jurgen Klinsmann was the problem. So we've got to get, a guy who understands American players in Bruce Arena, and that's immediately going to solve everything. Well, it does solve everything because you're not going anywhere, so you're sitting on your butt. And so that's a problem with pundits. They're essentially, they don't cover the dearth of the issue, the scope of the issues. They're narrowly targeting a very small problem. Maybe it is a problem, but maybe it's not the biggest problem. Maybe the biggest problem lies elsewhere. But because one pundits agree with the other and third parties pundit with the fourth, and now all are piling up the same thing everybody was piling on Klinsmann, who only qualified out a group of death in 2014 and then took it to the semifinals of Copa Centenario. Well, he was the problem. So everybody, including every stupid MLS owner, went after the biggest problem. They went after what the person or the cause they perceived to be the biggest problem, which was Jurgen Klinsmann. So Jurgen Klinsmann got canned, and the savior, Bruce Arena, who was just an incompetent buffoon, couldn't qualify them. And now they're trying to solve another problem. It's something that's bandied out in the media. It's all, listen, the media, I wouldn't say they're fake. And actually, let's not talk about politics, let's not bring up politics. I really think that most people who are, except Rob Stone, he's a phony, but most people actually do care. They don't just repeat everything that's been told to say, this guy's the greatest. Landon Donovan, he's like the next Pelé. Freddie Adu, he's even like two Pelés put together, plus Garrincha thrown in. Garrincha was a famous player. But what happens is that they're addressing the wrong problem, they praise the wrong people, they address the wrong issues, and they just essentially waste your time. And they're the reason why things are wrong and why things are bad. Now listen to me, maybe we can solve them.